Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Sabrina Alimi, and I am part of the IAB's Mobile Marketing Center of Excellence, and our local committee is part of that group. So I'm very excited here to talk about actually kind of the buy side and sell side of managing local campaigns. So we have a great panel of experts, and so I'll kick it off to you guys. Just do a quick introduction, say name, title, and a little bit about kind of your company, your role.
Sure, I'm Brent Tall. I'm a group media director with AKQA. We're a global agency that is a digital-centric global agency. Here in San Francisco, we handle media planning and buying for the Gap, of which account I oversee, as well as Clorox, Safeway, Autodesk, several others. But we pride ourselves on kind of integrated solutions spanning creative, media, analytics, and development.
My name is Rob Reed. I'm the founder of Momentfeed. We provide an integrated solution to manage Facebook, Foursquare, Twitter, Instagram, Google+, at the local level with global scalability. So we work specifically with brands that have multiple locations, like your Home Depots and 7-Elevens of the world. And our solution is essentially a paid, earned, owned platform, but again with a focus around local and individual locations as opposed to just brand level management.
I'm Matthew Shevach. I run the ad solutions group at Retailigence, which I just joined recently. Retailigence provides a local platform, for local online to offline marketing. This enables marketers to tap into a database that we've built of over 10 million products across hundreds of retailers in the US. We have product coverage all the way down to the SKU level across about half of the sales in the United States. We enable marketers to tap into this as well as apps to tap into this data to provide search listings. And we're increasingly working with other partners to enable both buy and sell side partners within the ad ecosystem to leverage this data for targeting and optimizing of creative as well.
So, throughout today, we've been talking a lot about the small merchants, the small, medium businesses, and a little bit about local or national brands. And you guys all really work with kind of the national brands trying to reach a local audience. Let's talk a little bit about that. Kind of what are some of the opportunities and challenges specifically working with a national brand at a local level?
I'll take it. That's one of the big problems that we solve with our technology. And local marketing had always been, your cable TV, your direct mail, local newspapers, and now with social networks becoming ubiquitous and smartphones essentially becoming ubiquitous, now local can actually be done at scale through those channels. So we look at kind of social and mobile transforming local, but still it's not easy really to scale that because in what I'd say like the first wave of social media 1.0, it was pretty much, if you were the Gap, you just had to manage a brand page for the Gap. Now Gap has 900 locations or so, something like that. So now they have 900 Facebook pages that they have kind of the option to manage, more of an opportunity there to actually manage those pages, but how do they actually do that in a scalable way? So these are some of the challenges that we're confronting.
Yeah, along those lines, I think, the challenge of just working, at the kind of brand level and kind of corporate level, and how do you kind of take a one-size-fits-all message when in actuality the most impactful is really kind of listening to the local markets, local store managers, understanding really kind of what the nuances of each region and in each individual store and tailoring kind of marketing and to them. The other big challenge is just really kind of an education standpoint, and how do you disseminate information? How do you kind of communicate down all the way to the point of purchase? I think a lot of the challenges in running, kind of campaigns that start globally but then kind of scale down locally. Is how do you get people at the registers knowing what promo codes to enter and entering them in right, and how do you get into the POS systems, and how do you make sure the messaging's on point? But these are to the point of we've got 900 Facebook pages. How do we oversee and kind of logistically manage that?
Because that's where commerce happens. It's happening at the local level. It's not happening at the brand level. You know, when you want a Gap, you're not looking for Gap headquarters. You're looking for a particular Gap location.
Mm-hmm. That's where we've taken an approach where, you know, leveraging the data and then tapping, you know, what's actually inside the store can be used to make that ad really relevant. You know, trying to drive the consumer based upon some notion of both the location, some intent or interest you might have, and combining that with what's actually available to drive the consumer to that. Maybe it's, you know, notifying the consumer that you believe that they're, you know, interested in that very rare white iPhone and directing them to the store where that's available. So leveraging that data to customize that creative at scale can be very tricky. I think there is potential for, you know, that local or regional manager to come in and customize the, you know, promotion or offer component, and that's not really, I think, happening yet. There's an education challenge there. But the technology, it sounds like, you know, with Rob and our platform as well, you know, we can now enable hundreds or thousands of permutations of a creative based upon that messaging and putting in the right products or the right availability.
So let's elaborate on that a little more. So you're talking about dynamic creatives and putting in the right information. What type of, you know, ad formats or creative formats really work for local advertising?
Well, we've, just to continue with that discussion, you know, we've particularly been leveraging dynamic creative primarily in display on mobile. We haven't been using other formats, but we're typically pulling in a combination of product images, promotion, location mapping, and then obviously we're pulling this into microsites and landing pages as well, where, you know, we're including the ability for the user to easily find coupons, browse through related products, or even search for products that might be available at a local store once they've signified that that's the store that they're interested in. So really thinking back to the campaign objective, how do you expose, you know, the right creative messaging that's going to drive all the way to that?
Well, you know, the holy grail for any kind of advertising is really delivering the right message to the right person at the right time at the right place. And that just wasn't possible before mobile, really, and smartphones came into the picture. And then you look at, you know, a platform like Facebook, where you've got, you know, 1 billion people that Facebook knows a lot about, you know, your demographics, your interests, your behaviors. And now you know, you get those people on mobile, and I think the recent numbers that mobile Facebook users are spending 11.5 hours a month in the mobile app on average. That's 750 million people globally. So, you know, the numbers start to get really big, but then you can also get really granular, and that notion of delivering that right message at the right place actually becomes possible.
Yeah, no, I think with mobile, you have this interesting opportunity to really kind of be hyper relevant. You know, it's the data's been out there, and we know we know who's interested in style, and we know you might even be in the market for jeans, but we don't necessarily know that you're ready to go into the store right now. And I think that's what, you know, mobile does kind of offer, that connective. It's kind of the connective medium between reaching somebody sitting on their couch and getting them to actually come in store. You know, when we know they're on the go, that's kind of our opportunity to kind of steer, redirect, and intercept them.
So if they're on the go, what kind of message are you sending to them? Is it all about, hey, you're 2 miles from the store, or is there other opportunities that other information, local location kind of gives you to optimize your creative?
Yeah, I mean, I think ideally it just depends on who you are, right? I mean, I think the question is, who are you, what do I know about you, and how can I hopefully deliver a more relevant message than just, I know you're within a mile of the store, 10% off, you know, your next purchase. So that's, you know, what we're all kind of striving for. I think all of the different disparate kind of data pools out there are starting to kind of talk to each other to allow for that. And I think, you know, you guys to my left are kind of solving that's, you know, attacking that solution as well as us.
And so we had a really interesting discussion on our prep call about kind of where are you buying local advertising. So Rob, let's start with you. Kind of, you know, you're focused on the social media sites. Why is that a big opportunity for you?
Well, yes. I mean, my bias is towards a few things. You know, first, in-stream or native advertising, specifically on mobile, because you have such limited real estate. So as an advertiser, the opportunity to be in the Facebook news feed or in the Twitter feed, as opposed to like the banner across the bottom of the screen that you might click inadvertently, is much more compelling. And then the targeting on Facebook, again, coming back to how much data Facebook has, I mean, their accuracy rate on targeting is like 91% compared to like a cookie, which is, it's definitely less than 50%. It might be as low as 35% accuracy on a browser cookie in terms of the targeting. So, you know, on Facebook, there's very little question of whether or not you're reaching the right person. It really comes down to, you know, that kind of final mile that, you know, did it convert? That's really where a lot of the focus is right now with Facebook and all, you know, ad solutions right now is attribution.
That's another thing Facebook, Twitter, all those social media sites bring is reach, right? We were talking earlier about how do you do local advertising and still at scale. But besides social media sites, what other sites or what other apps or verticals are you running local campaigns on? What kind of is working?
Well, we've been leveraging RTB through various DSP layers to just access pools of inventory where we can find accurate location. You know, we sort of see two different worlds. I think, to your point, there's sort of more premium inventory where we can guarantee placement. Prices are higher. Performance potentially pays out, potentially doesn't. I think coming back to that issue of how are we measuring performance and attributing is the big question right now. So we can dance around that a little bit, but I think that's probably something we should discuss too. But we are seeing with the lower priced RTB media some good success. I mean, we're particularly unique in that we do not need to rely upon audience data or cookies or things like that, because we're just looking for a location and then untapping, you know, what's available at that location for a brand. So now a brand can you know, add a local dimension of you know, driving someone to buy New Balance sneakers at the local store where New Balance doesn't necessarily have a store. So we are looking at how we combine that with more advanced audience targeting and targeting at Facebook as the next stage. And I do think that offers quite a bit more potential.
Yeah, I think for us, you know, when it comes to you know, an objective of getting people to go in store and purchase something, you know, get in their car or hop on the bus and go downtown, you know, mobile and the ability to kind of target mobile in regards to location, you know, is superior really to any other platform. So in some ways, it really doesn't even matter. I mean, yes, you know, we go where people are within mobile, and that's social is a big part of that. And local search, but you know, in-app, mobile web, if we've got a beat on kind of where people are and when the mindset they're in, that's, you know, that's superior to anything else.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit it right there, like the mindset. And depending on, especially on a, say, smartphone, right? You go into different apps or different sites to do specific activities. So I think it's really important as a media buyer to kind of keep that in mind when you're, you know, depending on what kind of creative you do or, you know, when you reach someone, it's really important.
Yeah, no.
You look at, I mean, the frame of mind that people are in when they're on mobile. I mean, the data around local search speaks for itself. Like in-app, local search is 78% end in a purchase. You know, that's on, you know, whether that's on Google or Facebook or MapQuest or Apple Maps. Like when people are searching for something, generally they want to make a purchase about 78% of the time. So you translate that, you know, that's more of a, you know, kind of inbound optimization challenge, but it definitely transfers over into advertising. If you can get the right ad in front of that person on their mobile device, they're generally in a kind of purchasing mindset.
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I think, you know, mobile is definitely the best last touch, but not necessarily the first touch. And I think when it comes to mindset, you know, we definitely don't look at mobile in a silo. You know, I think it is the key kind of connective element and medium, but a lot of the upper funnel, you know, driving interest, driving demand, can be delivered more effectively, you know, in more lean back, you know, lean back media, more impact, you know, video, desktop, web. So we really kind of use that to kind of drive the interest, drive the demand, and then use mobile to really kind of get them in the right mindset.
I agree with you that it's definitely a last touch medium on mobile, but I've definitely shifted my mindset recently to consider mobile as the first screen. And I think there's a good debate out there because, I mean, TV has traditionally been the first screen. They've been saying mobile second screen. I disagree with that now. I think mobile is the first screen. Anybody?
Well, I think it depends which audience you're talking about, right? Certainly for some audience, mobile is the only screen maybe, right? So, yeah, I would agree.
And I think it's also important to kind of delineate between tablet and mobile, right. You know, and we really see kind of a different mindset and attitude and you know, location kind of in the purchase life cycle as to kind of where, you know, tablet plays versus phones.
Yeah, and I think particularly with, you know, online versus offline purchasing, if you're, you know, on your tablet at home and, you know, you're consuming media and you get an ad that could influence you in a later, you know, mobile purchase area, or you could purchase, you know, later on that night at home. What we're seeing though is, you know, a lot of the hubbub around in-store use of mobile devices around things like showrooming and concerns about people having devices, and I think the data's actually shown that the majority of consumers are in fact making purchases in those stores versus going to other stores. And in fact, those people with devices as a ratio, I think 4 or 5 to 1, are actually making an unplanned purchase just because they have their device. So I think the big question is, how do you get in front of them in the store so that you know, provide them the information they need as opposed to be concerned about it?
So let's kind of go back to the topic of, you know, we talked a little bit about kind of where you're running the campaigns, the creative measurement, right? So most local campaigns are driving some type of in-store, on-site kind of experience. So how do you measure that? Are we talking about offline tracking? Like what metrics are important to knowing that that campaign was successful?
Well, you know, I'd like to say that we zip up the file and, you know, you send it to any of our vendors and do a match back, and they tell us how many, you know, purchases were made. I think that's kind of what we are aspiring to, and every brand out there kind of grapples with. There's a lot of issues around ownership and privacy. But, you know, in the meantime, we definitely are working with a lot of third parties. You know, MasterCard and American Express are kind of pushing hard to give some insight into kind of point of purchase. And then we do our fair share of qualitative purchase intent studies, and then we look at a lot of online proxies, you know, store locator visits, engagement with certain product pages, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, that clicks no longer matter, especially in mobile. So that's definitely not what we're looking at anymore as a KPI for performance. We get a lot of questions about, you know, kind of general ROI on social media, and really the only easy answer to that is some kind of direct response mechanism, like, you know, a Facebook offer that you could put out where there's a clear redemption at the point of sale, where they scan a barcode or something, and you can actually see what was purchased and what the margin was on that. Aside from that, you know, what's really interesting is the Retailigence data that's matching, you know, purchases with whether or not somebody actually saw an ad, and that's where we're also seeing that clicks don't matter, because you're seeing like people that have actually seen ads and made purchases, and there's no correlation between the people who actually clicked the ad and the people who actually made the purchase. So it's kind of good to see us moving away from click-throughs, because they were never really that meaningful to begin with.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. We've moved pretty much away from the click on the ad. We are looking at some proxies of you know, click to call or mapping directions. We're also seeing some tests similar to the Retailigence, where we're working with one smaller regional test to do some media isolation and essentially turn everything off except for this campaign, and then understand how that's working by region to impact actual sales. And so there's some ways to do that right now. I think, though, some of these point of sale, coupon redemption things are workable, although in some cases not necessarily scalable.
Yeah, a lot of big brands don't like to run discounts, so the offers thing can be off the table.
I mean, it sounds like we're still figuring it out, right? We're kind of testing, we're going through. So how closely do you work, either with the media providers that you're buying from, or the agencies or direct advertisers that you're working with? What's that relationship like?
Well, I think we're very codependent, and one does not exist without the other. I think anybody that operates in kind of the local advertising space and definitely in the retail space is very, has their eye on analytics and being able to track back to the point of purchase. So I think if you talk to anybody that's kind of leading in the field, they will have some beta tests and partnerships kind of in place that are starting to try to close that loop.
Yeah, I would agree. I think sometimes we feel like a systems integrator, right? I mean, pulling together for each campaign the components that are going to provide the insights, the attribution, the targeting, the creative. I mean, we have sort of our core platform, but that which each new campaign is bringing to the table is sort of evolving in real time right now. There are new providers and new capabilities that we haven't worked with yet that we now add into a new campaign and then can work with more easily on the next go around. So sometimes that can be challenging in the first few rounds, though.
Well, I'll plug a friend's company. The company's called Shift. They were Graph Effect. They were one of the first ads API partners for Facebook, and they've shifted to a new collaboration platform that really is kind of solving this kind of client agency managing campaigns problem that had been out there, and so I think we're integrating with them as well to enable more efficiencies between agencies and brands, and the complexity of actually managing these campaigns, not just at the brand level, but right down to individual store level.
So we have a little over 10 minutes left, but I want to open up first to the audience. Are there any questions for the panel? There's one over here.
This is a question for Brent. What percentage of your ad spend right now is going to mobile?
Can you just reiterate the question?
Sure. The question was what % of our ad spend is going to mobile right now? I'm not going to answer that directly, but I will say that mobile is kind of the primary platform for us. One of our core audiences are millennials, and we know that to your point here, it's the first screen for most of them, and so.
So you're saying the majority of your ad spend is going to mobile?
And let's just be clear. So from a digital media standpoint. Mobile is definitely kind of a key platform, if not the key platform for us.
You didn't answer the question.
I told you I wasn't.
Cool. Other questions in the audience? There's one back there.
Yeah, I'm really curious. Two questions. First, how has FBX changed the game for mobile advertising? And also, are you able to use FBX to reach a lot of audiences for actual
Honestly, we haven't done a lot with FBX for local and mobile. It's pretty much just been brand level so far. So I don't have a good answer for that.
We haven't gotten there yet either. We'll let you know soon.
Yeah, I think I think it's still early. I think we're starting to test it, but I don't think it's not a game changer yet. But I think it has the potential.
I mean, Facebook's got 20-some ad units right now, and like every week they give you a new way to target them. So it just becomes all these different permutations of targeting on mobile, targeting based on geography, targeting based on interests. So there's so much experimentation going on right now on Facebook because there's so much to work with.
What other technologies or new innovations have kind of come up in the local space in the last year or so, or you think that are coming out soon that you guys are kind of excited about that'll really help either, basically help those national brands reach their local audiences?
I think the thing that's really kind of changed things in the past year or two has really just been more collaboration and communication between a lot of these, the companies that are out there. A lot of them have existed in their silos for a long time, But the challenge has always been to kind of thread them together and kind of, close the loop. And I think, Retailigence working with MasterCard, who's working with Facebook, or, TapAd is starting to, be able to kind of identify the whole kind of every device that an individual user has from, desktop at home, laptop at work, mobile, tablet, connected TV. I think just kind of that those the interconnectedness that's starting to happen is really kind of the biggest, I think, game changer for us.
Well, I haven't talked too much about Foursquare, but they're one of the platforms we support, and can't actually talk about some of their new ad units that are coming out, but in terms of new technology, they do have some new ad units that are coming out that were really, I think, are going to be their killer monetization machine, really. So you should definitely look for those.
Yeah, so I'll give you a different kind of response. I think one of the things that's also changing is the consumer mindset. So right now with Amazon marching to give us same-day delivery, and for those of us lucky enough to have Google Shopper Express, we can now think about getting products in lots of different ways. So it doesn't need to be, I'm out and about and I can order that and have it come in 3 days. It doesn't need to be, I can go find it at the local store. It can also be, I'll get it delivered later on. And I think people coming up to the point where they can figure out how to build this into their actual advertising so that your advertising is transactional in many different fashions and creative environments is where things will get very frictionless for the consumer, and I think that will be the very big opportunity for the brand. So,
do you guys see any specific verticals, or can you name any specific advertisers or brands that you feel are doing really well, doing local campaigns?
Well, I mean, somewhere that we're very interested in. As much as I love algorithms, I love it, even more when people tell us, exactly what they're up to. And I think something that's been a little bit underutilized has been mapping and directions. Google Maps, Waze, to us, kind of nothing, it's hard to beat when somebody tells us exactly where they are, where they're going to be, and how long it's going to take them to be there. So I think, I don't know how many of you guys use Waze, but they've started to kind of incorporate brands into the platform. Now I know where every Taco Bell is within my driving routes. And if it was in and out, I would care a little bit more. But I think once they start kind of maturing that, once they can kind of overlay some personal interest, if I know that it's a 24-year-old woman who is interested in fashion. And here's all the Gaps and H&Ms and Uniqlo's kind of in the area. I think that's a pretty interesting proposition.
Yeah, for me, it's the Walgreens is one of the most innovative brands we've actually had the pleasure to work with. I'm consistently impressed by what they do. They were the first to do the kind of single-use scannable barcodes in Foursquare specials. Their mobile app with Instagram printing. So you could send your Instagram photos through their app to be printed at a Walgreens. And their loyalty program, which has a huge mobile and local component, is just, it's like 50 or 60 million people have enrolled in it in less than 6 months. So I think they're one of the ones to watch in mobile and local because it's such a huge priority for them.
Do you mind if can I ask Brent a question, actually? Is that allowed? The panelist asks other panelists questions. So my question is, how do you view at the agency level mobile versus local? And, I think that's one of the things we're trying to tackle now is that, both of them are moving very quickly. Mobile can be defined as everything from your device you're on and your tablet to actually being mobile. Clearly, a huge percentage of purchases happen within a 15-mile radius of your home. So all this comes together. What does that mean for how, an agency changes the way they think about marketing a brand or a retailer's products?
Yeah, I think, mobile to me is more about the audience and whether, it's a device, a platform of choice for them. And I think local maybe has more to do with the brand itself and what the objectives are. You know, if I was an e-commerce client, you know, local would be probably a little bit less of a priority, although mobile might still be a key platform.
Yeah. And are you guys finding, you know, takers for developing local objectives for these mobile campaigns and driving that very successfully?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah.
So we have a little less than 2 minutes left. I'd like if each one of you could just kind of give a tip to the audience, whether, you know, if you're going to run a mobile local campaign, or it doesn't have to be mobile, right? A local focused campaign. What's like one thing you should either focus on or think about, or just kind of what's one tip to give people?
We start at that end.
Okay. Sure. So my tip is, you know, don't spend all your time on targeting. I think there's going to be lots of targeting. Targeting is great. We went through the same thing with every other form of media. Spend some time thinking about what creative is going to tie back to your campaign objective. Think creatively, strategically, and tactically about how you can use data to drive that. Of course, I think you need to pay attention to privacy and all of that. But those issues aside, I think, you know, drive dynamic, hyper-local targeting and creative. So.
Well, for us, if you're a brand that has physical locations, the data point that really matters is your lat long for every one of those locations. It needs to be absolutely perfect. Whether that's for local search, somebody wants to find your store to buy something, or whether you're using that data for creating a geofence or using it for targeting. We get data from brands every day, their actual core data that powers their store finders, and find that their lat longs are ridiculously inaccurate. Like 10% of the stores, you couldn't actually find them if you used their store finder and a navigation device. It would take you miles out of the way, and you would end up in somebody's driveway, you know, thinking you're, you know, because that's where Walmart took you. So it's overlooked though. It's these brands don't get their lat longs back from Google or MapQuest or whatever, and just put them into their store finder, just assuming that they're accurate, and they're not. So until you get that right, you really can't do anything else.
So I think, you know, a key thing to kind of keep in mind is just, you know, to avoid kind of a one-size-fits-all kind of messaging approach, and to understand that, you know, somebody on their tablet at home is different than somebody, you know, on their phone, you know, checking Yelp on the go, and is different from somebody at work kind of on their laptop. And you know, the more you can kind of hyper-segment kind of your messaging and your objectives so that you can kind of nurture people kind of one step at a time, the better. You know, it's a very different proposition if you've got an online objective, say an e-commerce objective, where somebody could stay on one device and have a, you know, complete session, you know, from beginning to end. But when you're asking people to kind of, you know, go through a multi-device, multi-step, you know, day process perhaps, as much as you can kind of get into the mindset of what the mindset of the user when they're on the media of choice, the better.
Great, a lot of great advice shared, so thanks everyone. And hopefully you'll be around for the cocktails if people have questions. Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.